Mr. Robert Livingston, am here to present the proposal of the Continental Association in order to prompt Britain to improve the circumstances it has brought upon us. British rule fits under the ideals laid out by John Locke in the Second Treatise of Government. Whether Locke's account of the role of government is agreed upon or not, it serves as the ground by which Britain operates and shall be the grounds by which we make our decisions. Locke perceives property as the most important thing to man and the purpose for which government was created. But Britain first invades our property by taxation. Now, you needn't remind me that the government holds the right to tax the people, but may I remind you that this power only exists by our consent. Neither is any regard given for our estate. Britain has assumed the power to seize and make use of our property should we be in violation of their intolerable acts. Parliament acts upon its own approval, but does not adhere to the approval of the colonies. And how could they? We have no representation in Parliament. In the state of nature, the execution of the law of nature is in man's hands, and everyone has the right to punish the aggressors of that law to such a degree that it may hinder its violation. While we do not exist in the state of nature currently, the fundamental right still exists. If the government fails to protect our property, they are subject to our execution of the law. In any circumstance by which the legislative or executive act arbitrarily and invade our property, they forfeit the power that we did give them. Britain, in its violation of its duty to protect our property, has forfeited its right to the prerogative power, and therefore any other method of rule in place. The greatest example of Parliament's willingness to act without our consent, perhaps, is stated by one of their own members of Parliament. His actions against those of the Patriot faction include, "For no man that I know of is taxed by his own consent," and some explanation of an imaginary representation that's sufficient for the rest of Britain. The cause of this logic, whether a complete lack of understanding of Parliament's duties and purpose, or their own selfish motivations, is unclear to me. Whether by pure ignorance or absence of the desire of the public good for the colonies, their transgressions exist nonetheless. Now, I fancy myself a reasonable man. Not every transgression is worthy of the brutality opposing England encompasses. However, a list of transgressions this pervasive cannot escape regard. I have not discussed every infringement of their bounds, yet one alone is sufficient foundation to dissolve the government entirely. In an attempt to persuade the British government to understand the weight of their recent actions, the First Continental Congress in the year 1774 proposes the Continental Association. The association exists with the intent to enact a boycott on all trade with Britain. I am fully aware of the concerns about the potential loss of property suffered during this period of time, but Locke realizes revolution and opposition to the government follow tyranny. We must understand that the means of obtaining freedom from such tyranny may require sacrifice, but that it is essential to protecting our property definitely. I assure you the association adheres to all of Locke's principles, as I shall not be called a hypocrite. Upon stating Britain's transgressions against the colony, and recognizing the colonies are justified in opposition, I, Judge Robert Livingston, on behalf of Massachusetts and the rest of the colonies, strongly encourage that Congress approve the imposition of the association.